Welcome back to another episode of the Girl Dad Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Greg Thompson. In this episode, I sit down with Emmy award-winning journalist Kris Millgate. We talk about her path from network news to founding Tightline Media, the lessons she learned hiking with her dad, and why curiosity, persistence, and owning your story matter, especially for women and the next generation of outdoor storytellers. Hey, Kris, thanks for coming on the show. Today we're joined by Kris Millgate, Emmy award-winning journalist out of Idaho. Kris, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's a sunshine day, and I couldn't be happier about where things are for the new year.
That's awesome. Yes, Happy New Year to everyone. We like to work a little bit backwards here at Girl Dad Outdoor Podcast, Kris. Let's talk about where you're at today and then go through your progression of how you got there and how influences in your life led you to the outdoors and what you're doing today. So tell us a little bit about Tightline Media and a little bit about Kris Millgate.
I am an outdoor journalist, and I am the owner of Tightline Media. Tightline Media is 20 years old, and that's quite a milestone for a freelancer, especially a self-employed female freelancer in the outdoor space. I went to school for broadcast journalism. That's my background. I worked for TV news for a decade, so I worked for network affiliates across the country, and they owned me. They owned my content. They owned how I did my hair, what I wore, the makeup I wore, and my assignments. And about the 10-year mark, there became this thing that we all started relying on called the web. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is my chance. All the mediums are going to mesh. I knew that you would find TV stories online through video. I knew that you would find magazine stories online through print. Everything was going to come together. And so I wanted to branch out on my own, and I wanted to work for all the outlets, not just one outlet. So now I own me, and I own my content, and I decide how I do my hair and what clothes I wear and what stories I'm covering. And I hold myself to an extremely high standard as a journalist, but I knew that I could work in that multimedia fashion and work for print and video outlets. I can tell you a story through video, through photo, through words, through audio, digital. All those platforms came together, and I took advantage of that and then grew from there, from 2-minute stories for a newscast every day to half-hour documentaries about wildlife that also have books and soundtracks and film tours. And so things have just kind of blossomed, and I just kind of hang on for the ride knowing that if these are all my choices, so I have to own up to them and stick with them. And I like the challenge of that. And here we are 20 years later, still rolling with it.
That's amazing. Congratulations. And in case anyone missed that, over her shoulder right there, that is an Emmy. So Kris
in the middle.
Yeah, Kris is a big deal. Very legitimate in the outdoor journalism world. Kris, you talked about transitioning from being a network affiliate into controlling your own destiny. For any girls coming up in the industry, is there any advice you can give them if that is a path that they're thinking about?
My advice for anyone thinking about a path in the outdoor industry, especially in the outdoor media segment of it, and especially women, it applies to men and women, but this is what I live by. Work for it rather than wish for it. And that applies to everyone, especially in the field that we're in. It's not an easy profession. It is not a glamorous profession, but to me, it's a rewarding profession, and it is an important profession, and it matters regardless of how things feel in a moment. In the big picture, these stories about our natural resources matter, and it doesn't matter if someone says these are not the stories for me because I'm a girl, because I know I can do those stories, and I've proved that I can do those stories. When my nose is bleeding in a wildfire, I'm still working. When the snot is freezing in my nose because it's 18 degrees below zero, I'm still rolling with my cameras. So I know I can do these jobs, and I know that outside, gender is irrelevant. Mother Nature doesn't care whether you're a man or a woman. It's the same beating for everyone, and it depends on how much of a beating you can tolerate. And luckily for me, I have a pretty high pain tolerance. So I'm still out there. And so it's not an easy haul. Don't ever think that. But if you work for it instead of wish for it, you get there.
Great advice. And for all the dads listening, apply that to what you do with your girls when they're young, right? Prepare them to be ready to take on those challenges. Don't be afraid to take them out in the woods. Don't be afraid to do things with them. They can handle it. And if they can't, they'll learn. And that's going to teach them life lessons and help them be more prosperous into adulthood. So,
I learned early on that I felt comfortable outside.
yeah.
I wanted to be outside. It bugged me that I couldn't go to Boy Scout camp. Like, why is Boy Scout camp for boys and girls sell cookies at the grocery store? I don't want to sell cookies. I want to go build a fire in the woods. And so, yeah, regardless of the age, the younger you start, the better.
Yes.
Get those kids out there. Get them used to being out there. But I always have felt whole outside. And so it felt natural to me to start going out at a younger age.
Yeah. And do you think that had... Kris and I were talking on off air, and Kris will tell you she was a little bit of a shy kid. Did that shyness, do you think that drove you to be outside because you could be alone, still doing things, but be comfortable and have fun?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. I grew up painfully shy and terrified of beards. And now I talk to strangers every day and I run around in the woods with strange beards all the time. So something shifted, right?
Absolutely.
I think that sometimes I still have a little bit of shyness, and especially if I'm doing something live or on a really tight deadline, and I'll get an Elvis leg, I'll fidget in my leg, but that's below the camera, so people can't see that.
Yeah.
Also, in certain settings, I'm so used to doing an interview and then saying, okay, that's enough, stop record.
Yeah.
But I don't really know how to end conversations well. And so the shyness will come out when I'm not with the camera. And luckily, in the industry I'm in, you don't run into very many shy people. So when that comes out, people just think I'm being polite, which you don't see much in media either. So it gets passed off as polite. But growing up, that was something that I had to figure out how to deal with. And it worked out okay for me, but it wasn't being outside that shed the shyness. It was, I always knew what I was going to do. And that was, I was going to be a reporter. I was going to tell you a story. I learned how to write at an extremely young age. My writing is solid. I don't doubt that ability. I've always had it. I've had to learn other abilities like looking you in the eye when I'm talking to you, and how to use a camera, and how to string the right sentences together.
Yeah.
But I knew what I was going to do, and it never changed. And even though I wasn't born with the skill set to do the career that I now have, I figured out how to push through those things and overcome those things so that I could do what I knew I was made to do. So pushing through the shyness was more about my career endeavors as a journalist. In the outdoor space, I do find that I am quiet.
You're what?
I'm quiet, and it's because I'm listening. I want to hear
okay.
what the wildlife and the wildland have to offer us. And sometimes it really bugs me when people talk over that. So I will spend time alone to capture those natural sounds and let that kind of become what I immerse myself in. But if there's people there and we've got to do an interview, it's chatty Cathy all day long. We'll get it done.
That's why I was like, you're quiet? I didn't realize you were going to say that when you're in the wild.
I can be quiet. Stick me in a blind, waiting for birds before sunrise. I can hold still and be quiet when I have to. And I'm a very high, I run hot. I'm very fast moving. And so I don't drink coffee. You would hate me in a blind or any other situation with caffeine, but I can simmer it down, especially when it's required for the wild. The last thing I want to do is interrupt what the wild is doing.
Yes.
We're already in their way, so I don't want to be more in their way as they try to make their way. I don't want them staring at the camera. I don't want them running from the camera. I just want them to do their thing. And that means I have to take it down a few notches in their house so that they can do their thing.
Yes. So, outdoor journalism, in your free time, what do you like to do?
In my free time, I do outdoor. And
Exactly.
so it's a really tricky thing because work can always slip in on my day off.
Yeah.
And I have to kind of watch that. My whole career I have fly fished. My first job as a reporter was in Idaho, and I learned to fly fish while I was here, and my husband lived in a different state for the first 2 years we were married. And so he would only come visit on weekends, so I would fly fish and do my live shots, and then he would come up on weekends and we would fly fish. But I've covered fly fishing my whole career, and I find that, I don't know if resentment's the right word, but the point is, at a certain point, if work is always invading your time off, you feel like you don't get time off. Now, it is a privilege that I have to work in the outdoors, but I have to be extremely careful about how it invades my outdoors. I shouldn't have to carry a camera on every outdoor outing. I shouldn't have to be thinking about how to sequence shots. I should be paying attention to teaching my sons how to cast. And so I should be trying to keep up with my husband, who's as fast as a mountain goat. So there's things that happen in the field when I'm working, and I behave in a different way, and my mind moves in a different way when I'm working than when I'm not working. And I have to be really careful to make sure that I don't get to a point where I feel like I'm always working outside, or I would resent that. It's a fine line that you have to walk. So I fly fish, I bird hunt, I trail run, I bike, I hike, I row, I camp. Everything that you do outside, I do it. Sometimes I'm doing it for work and sometimes for play.
Yeah. Before I get to the next question, Kris just mentioned a very important point. No matter what you're doing, when you're with the kids, do not disturb. Because it sounds silly, but it's so important, right? Because you separating work from life in the outdoors, because they're one and the same. So if you leave the opportunity for work to invade that, same thing. If you got the kids outside, put on Do Not Disturb. So they're going to be there. You can call them back 15 minutes later. So I just wanted to stress that point, because that's something very important that you talked about, and it's very important to apply as we get our kids outside. So
even my bird dog knows when I look at my phone, especially if I stop moving. Because then he's like, oh no, we're out here not for you, not for work. We're out here to look for birds. And he'll get vocal about it when he sees me look at my phone if I stop with my feet. And one other thing I will say about spending time outside with your kids that's really important is to meet them at their level.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we forget that we're not born knowing how to do all these things outside. And a lot of us aren't born feeling comfortable outside. And so you need to make sure you're doing what matches their comfort level. Man, you want to fish. And man, you want to just catch a ton of fish and keep casting. But you know what? That little girl, she wants to throw rocks. Or that little boy wants a snack. And frankly, when the little boy wants a snack, I want one too. I eat all day long. And you have to realize that the number of fish you catch is going to go down.
Yes.
That's part of the deal. But guess what? When they get bigger, they know how to row the boat, and then your number of fish is off the charts.
Absolutely. All right. So with all those things that you like to do, how'd you get started? Who took you out and helped you cultivate this love for the outdoors that you have?
I cultivated my love for the outdoors through my dad, but not in the way people think. That the whole, when did you decide to be a journalist? That was like the same as when I decided to write with my left hand. It was always there. The outdoor thing, I always felt comfortable. But with all the things that I do outside, you'd think my dad was Sportsman of the Year. But it's not necessarily the case. I did not grow up hunting with my dad. I did not grow up fishing with my dad. My dad's never even been in my drift boat. I grew up hiking with my dad, and not necessarily with him, because with him means next to him, behind him. I followed my dad's dusty frame all over the Wasatch Mountains east of Salt Lake City, Utah. And the thing about following my dad is you just keep following him because he has no internal compass. So even when he's lost, he won't admit it. And so I spent miles and miles following my dad as he told me what he thought things were, but I now know they weren't. Like, that was not a volcano. That was just a little hot spring. And, those things that I think he had good intentions, but his imagination wandered so far. And at a young age, I believed him and had to learn later on, oh, here's what we were actually looking at. It was just a little hot pool, not a volcano, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But the important lesson that I have is because I was walking behind him, I don't like people in front of me. That seems like a race. Like when I trail run on a race, I don't like people in front of me because I feel like they're winning. And so I learned by having to walk behind my dad that I prefer to be with you, not behind you. But by being behind him, I also learned some good things like persistence. You keep going. You keep going. You do a lot of miles when your dad's lost and he doesn't admit it. So persistence, I learned. Tolerance. Gets really hot when you're lost. Gets really cold when you're lost. And determination. Those things are all there. And I am grateful that I learned those things from my dad. My dad still walks every day. He's in his 80s.
Really?
And he will look like he's going to be on the trail walking around his neighborhood this morning. I know it. He'll have his high-top hiking boots on. He'll have his faded jeans on. He'll have a trucker hat on, which wasn't cool back in the day to wear, but it's cool now. And he'll have his walking stick, and he will have a pocket knife on his belt. I can see it all in my head, and I love that I can see all of that, and it's because I stared at all of that for so long, walking behind him on the trail. And so that was my beginnings, was with my dad, and it was hiking.
That's
and
cool.
Biking. We did bike, but I hated biking because my bike didn't have gears. And so I would, and it didn't go back. It didn't have you had to like slam back on the pedal to use the brake. And so I would pedal like the Dickens behind him and try to catch him and never could. And I hated that bike. But hiking I liked even when we were lost.
Well, it seems like he taught you optimism because no matter how lost he was, everything was still good.
That's such a great point. I definitely get my optimism from my dad. My beat of covering outdoors and natural resources can be extremely depressing. And even yesterday, a woman came right up to me at the store and she's like, how do you stay at it? How do you stay so upbeat? And I think, it's my dad. It's optimism for sure. They pick up on the skill set that you have in the outdoor space. When kids watch their parents, they're looking at how they handle them, especially outside. But they also pick up on their attitude.
Yes.
My dad is an eternal optimist, and I'm so glad that I inherited that.
Yeah, that's also such a great point. Your kids soak in how you act. So if you're out and you're crabby and you're mission oriented and things aren't going the right way, they're going to take that and they're going to apply that into moving forward, and they're not going to want to go with you. So no matter if it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's always good. So
yeah, and I think when my husband and I had our two boys, we were already very much in the outdoor world, and we knew it would be hard, but we knew if we started young, it would eventually get easier. And so we did everything with them, almost to the extreme of the overload, to where the one will be like, do we have to kayak the Middle Fork of the Salmon River again? Which is like the thing, like you want that permit, you want to do that rafting trip in the Frank Church Wilderness. It is like,
yeah, I'm like, can I come raft that with you?
my boys know how to do it in an inflatable kayak. It's unheard of, but like they get to where maybe we might have immersed them so much that they're like, let me just back off and play a video game for a second because I don't know how to talk to the kids at school anymore.
Yeah. So what's funny is another episode, I spoke with a gentleman, Scott McInthune, and kind of a similar experience. He's like, we take our kids to the best fishing spots with the best gear, the best technology, and they go there and they catch fish and they do all of these great things. Are we setting them up for failure by do they reach the plateau too early?
I really think there's something to that. When especially my youngest, if we go out for birds and get skunked, the next time I ask him, he's like, nah, I'm good. And I know why, because once he's out there, he loves it. But he's like, you've spoiled me to success, right?
Yeah.
So then I force him to go, and I make sure it's extra hard so he realizes that he can do hard things.
Yeah. So were the boys different? Did you have to push them differently in order to get them to participate, or was it not optional? You're just going.
It depended on where they were age-wise. Um, I mean, the one was so young on our first rafting trip, he barely met the weight limit. And the reason you have a weight limit is when you hit white water, they can pop out if they're too light.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've done it all, and I think they're very proud of all the things that they've seen, and the opportunity they have to recreate on public land in Idaho is tremendous. And I know they are aware of that rare opportunity. But there are times, I'm not going to deny it, even today, when they even over Christmas break, even up to modern times, there'll be times when we say, get in the car, don't ask questions, and it's forced family fun day. There's going to be days where you have to say forced family fun.
Yes.
And that's the day. They know what it is. And I'm not saying you always should force it. Don't get me wrong.
But there are times. Yes.
But if you've made a habit, you shouldn't always have to force it. And so you've built in that base from when they're younger so that as they get older, they'll go. And if you're forcing it at first, I guarantee you once they get out there, they'll perk up.
Oh,
They'll get into it. But also, if you are so insistent on pushing that, it comes to a point where they don't know what to talk about with the kids at school. And so I do remember a time when we were like, hey, here's an Xbox. Go ahead and play, because we just realized like you have nothing in common with the kids that in the neighborhood. Like nobody's hanging out with you. So we kind of had to like use reverse psychology for a bit there.
Yeah, please be normal. Yeah. No,
You cannot wear your swimsuit to school or your life jacket, and that has happened.
Yeah, we had a similar experience. We took the girls to Alaska, did an RV, and life hack, if you get a crappy RV, there's not a GPS tracker, so you can take it across the old Denali Highway, have duct tape because stuff does rattle loose. But the clouds were coming in, and we're pulled over. We're like, we're going to go have lunch above the clouds. So we hiked, no trail, nothing. Our goal was to get up above the clouds. And they complained. Let's go back. We forgot our water. We forgot this. We're 15 minutes in, and there's bear scat and moose scat, and I'm like, I think I just killed our whole family. Everyone get close to me. Like, come on. But, there was 30 minutes of just complete mayhem before we got up there. But they got up there. The clouds came in. They're eating above the clouds. It was magical for them. But it's one of those examples where you have to push because the outcome is worth it. They don't know that yet.
Yeah,
So,
you turn forced family fun into
yes,
when can we do this again?
correct. Yes. So you hiked with your dad. You do some crazy things. At what age, when did you start amping up what you were doing? How did this progression go?
Okay, so my first reporting job was in Idaho. So I would say my second dad, after my
Yep.
real dad, my second dad is Idaho.
Ah,
And when you look at how the states are shaped, most of them have really boring straight lines as their borders because they're man-made. Idaho has this unique border that's made by this massive mountain range between Idaho and Montana.
yep.
And that tells me that there's still some wild and untamed country here. And to work in that country, you kind of have to be the same way. So I was covering all kinds of stories from crop to crime. And when I decided to go freelance, I niched down because I was already covering the outdoors. And I had already figured out how to make that the lead story in the newscast, even though that beat really didn't exist. But you get on a wildfire and you can get that bumped up in the newscast.
Oh, yeah.
So there were issues that were important that I wanted to cover, and they happened outside. And I knew that the landscape was going to be unforgiving. And so I learned to use that tolerance that I had gained from my dad to do my job and get those stories that nobody else wanted to get. And then what happened was as things evolved, I started working with not just, here's where to go to ride your mountain bike. Here's where to go to watch birds. Here's where to go to catch fish. It was, what's going on that's making it possible for you to catch fish? What's the backstory on making it possible that you're even able to use this public land? Those stories started to become interesting. And those stories require more than just some guy that knows where the trailhead is. That requires biologists and scientists and conservationists and activists and all of these people. So I get to have this wonderful opportunity to work outside with the extra added layer of working outside with people who love it just as much as me, and they know more than me. So I don't have to know it all. I just have to know the know-it-alls. Yeah. And I learned all these things about wildlife. The only reason I have the opportunity to pee my pants going nose to nose with a grizzly bear is because of a biologist teaching me about why we're trying to recover them. So those kind of crazy moments come about because I want to be totally into the story. And in order to do that, I want the person that knows the most about it, that's the best at it, and that can help me teach you about what's going on outside.
Yeah. And, you know, that's also when you have kids outside, right? Slow down and explain things. That's how people get interested. That's why people read your stories. That's why people listen to your interviews, right? Because you're explaining what's going on. It's no different when you have kids out. Take the time, explain why you're choosing this fly. Take the time explaining why you're taking this path, and it pays off in the long run. That's
You know what's interesting about that is also when you look at if you have more than one child, they'll both be outside, but look at what they're interested in.
Correct.
My one son, he wants to know the name of all the plants, and he's really good at like paying attention to the intricacies of a fly for dry fly. My other son, he thinks it's cool to talk about the clickiness of the reel.
Yeah.
And how the rod fits together. And he knows where the fish are. So the one can pick the flies and the other one knows where to throw the flies. And they're both fishing, but what they're interested in that sport, in that spot, in that moment is different.
No, that's very important. You know, one of my kids, it's funny. She likes being outdoors, but her idea of hiking is putting in her AirPods and getting to the end of the trail. She couldn't care less about one thing that she sees. She's also the one who thinks that she'll continue deer hunting if she can just shoot the deer. She'll come out and shoot it. You can do everything else. But it's engaging them in that different fashion.
That's true.
Yes. So with that, transition back to, you know, I want to show the art of the possible, right?
Okay.
You started hiking with your dad. You went to Idaho. You became a television journalist. Tell us about when you did your film about the salmon. Explain the depths that you are going to, because the picture I want to paint for people listening to this podcast is just simple things that you can do can lead to big outcomes. So talk about the experience of going and capturing one of your films, transitioning to one of your books. Walk us through all of the things that took place, just so we can see that the inclusion of taking little Kris Millgate for a hike transitioned into all of this.
Okay. We'll do it. Well, I've done it for salmon, grizzly bears, and sage grouse. Those are my biggies right now. And every biggie takes a piece of me. So you have to be careful about how much of you give up for these projects, but it's important to fully invest in them. And when I say pieces, I mean literally pieces. Yeah. Body parts go with these projects. So
explain a project.
So
when you say project, so everyone knows. Yeah.
So salmon migration, that project, which when I'm doing a project of that magnitude, I call them my biggies. And that would be salmon, grizzlies, and grouse. Salmon were the first biggie. And I had a bucket list. And people always ask, what's on your bucket list? Well, you know what? What's on my bucket list changes all the time because I don't wait anymore. Salmon sat on my bucket list for a little bit. And what I wanted to do was follow salmon migration from the ocean to Idaho. And it's a huge story. And in the Pacific Northwest, it's intriguing and people want to know about it. And every outlet wants that story, but not a single outlet has the money for that story. That's the beginning of the problem, right? How do you cover something of this magnitude when you don't have a single penny and nobody's throwing in with you?
Yeah.
So I had the idea and I had to stay there because as a journalist, I didn't have the wallet to do it on my bill. And so without someone to back me up, I couldn't do it. So it sat on that bucket list longer than I wanted. And then finally I got to where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And salmon aren't going to be around much longer. I mean, when you have a population shrink in one drainage from 3,000 to 32, like we're going down the drain. There's no coming back from that.
Yeah.
So I had set the plan, and then the pandemic started, and everything fell apart, and my persistence kicked in. Right, I'm not done yet. I'm not laying down. I'm not done. And so I drive a Toyota truck, and my local Toyota dealer was like, hey, what are you working on in the pandemic? And I was like, I'm pretty much unemployed. Nobody wants the outdoors, and any outlet that wants stuff wants it on the pandemic. And he's like, well, what were you going to do? And I said, I was going to follow salmon migration, but I've canceled my flights. I've canceled crew. I've canceled everything. And he's like, let's do it. We don't have much going on. Let's do it. We got a camper in. We got a truck in. We loaded those two things together, and I hit the road solo. Solo. So I traveled solo during the pandemic. And the reason I had to be solo, remember, we had to isolate.
Yeah.
So nobody was allowed to enter my camper. And I lived and worked out of a camper and a trailer following salmon migration 850 miles from the Oregon coast to the Idaho wilderness.
How long did that take you?
My first long haul was 2 weeks. And then at a certain point, I would get ahead of the fish.
Yep.
And I would come home and take a shower and hug my kids. Usually my kids wanted me to take a shower first. And then
I was going to say, preferably in that order, shower.
And then I would
hugs.
go back out. So, but it was a really surreal time to be in the field. And I'd never been to the Oregon coast. And I don't know what it looks like with people because I was there when it was empty. So it was great. Nobody walked into my shots. But once I had found somebody that would support what I was trying to do and keep their hands off of the editorial part of it, which is a big ask. When you're asking someone like Toyota to say, hey, throw in with me, but you can't be in charge of what comes out of it. There's no agenda here.
Yeah.
That's a huge ask. And they're trusting my integrity. They're trusting my credibility. And they're trusting my, what would be the word, I guess, my fan base, my audience.
Yeah.
They know that people are going to watch this. Everyone's stuck at home. They want to see what's going on.
Yeah, they're trusting your scope. Yeah. Like, what is your reach?
Like they want to know the reach. And I knew that I could do these updates on the road, and people at home would be like, where is she? How's she doing? What's going on? Well, I'm trying to tell you this story about salmon, and halfway through the migration route, I start falling apart, which is really uncomfortable because salmon die at the end of the migration. And I'm thinking, what happens when I get to mile 850? Like, I know that fish are dead, but that's not my plan.
Yeah.
And so I stuck with it, and I went in a really bad windstorm on the border of Oregon and Washington. My camera dumped over off the tripod and busted in a million pieces. There was no shipping cameras from China. There was nobody even with me. I called my husband crying. He's like, do I need to drive you a camera? I said, you're not going to find one. You know, it was like, there was just like you were moving, you were on an island with wheels, and everywhere I moved, I was alone. Just me and the fish, and maybe the person I was interviewing that day, 6 feet apart, with hand sanitizer and masks. And so as challenging as it was almost kind of magical, because it was like we were in these desperate times, and I had to come up with extremely creative measures to do my job. And I loved everything about it. I didn't love the bruises and the stitches, but I loved the things that happened because of those things. So I get to the end of the migration. There's a Chinook salmon spawning at mile 850. I know it's a female because they guard the nest. I've been able to follow these fish their whole way. I'm showing you everything they go through. 8 dams, all of us, all of our, whatever we throw in the river. There's farms, there's wilderness, there's hydropower. There's all these things in their way, and yet a few dozen still made it to this one spot. It's remarkable. And in that moment, you have to be human and not a reporter. You have to realize you're witnessing something nearly impossible that most everyone else is never going to see. So I didn't roll right away. Like I watched it, and I'm in my waders, and I have duct tape all over my camera to hold it together. And I can't even use the focus anymore, but the lens hasn't broke, so it's all
Yeah.
kind of it's capturing the scene. And I have stitches in 4 places, and no one was expecting that, and they're thinking, this is distracting because this whole ear was taped. So I actually had to do episodes where I explained what had happened, and I lost this part of my ear because of skin cancer. 80 miles of the 850-mile trip is roadless wilderness. I had to do that by a raft with a special permit. There was a bad whitewater rapid that knocked people out of the boat, and I pulled people in, and the rower flew out, so I had to row. Long story short, I ended up with stitches in two places in my chest. I had stitches in the back of my head. Like, all this is going on, and I'm not even supposed to be out because the doctor's like, you have so many stitches, I really don't recommend you going off grid. And there I am standing off grid in waders with a broken camera, stitches, and all I care about is that I can see this fish that made it. Like, that's why you do these stories.
Absolutely.
People want to see that. So that's kind of how that one developed. And then when I finished the road trip, there were all these episodes, and people were really curious, like, did you recover? How are you, and what's next? And so then the film came about, and then people were really curious about what had happened to my fall apart, and I didn't want that to take away from the salmon story. So I am not in the film. I am in a book. And there's a backstory book that tells you what it was like to make this movie. And that became the new way that I work. And I never expected that in my career. I always knew I'd be a journalist.
Yep.
But working for myself wasn't planned. And working to this magnitude where I live and work out of a camper and trailer on the road for field production. And then I bring you a film, and then I can bring you a book that goes with it. That wasn't planned, but I'm grateful every day that this is where things have gone.
That's amazing. And also, one thing to take note of there, you talked about we don't have much longer with the salmon. And this is something that I always say. There needs to be a sense of urgency about getting outside because everything is changing so rapidly. So even as you're thinking about an adventure with kids, an adventure with yourself that you can share, the stories with your kids, you have to do it because there's a shelf life to being able to do things like this. And Kris just spoke to it perfectly.
And I think to add to that, I'll get accused of being too intense. And it gets taken in ways that mortify me when people are like whatever the word is they want to use for my behavior, I'll just use intense. But I think that that's because I can feel how important these issues are.
Yeah.
And I can feel that they matter. So the intensity is not going away by any means. If anything, it's advancing right on top of us. Like, we can see that.
Yeah.
Things that have happened in my lifetime, that's crazy. That's intensity advancing, not retreating.
Yeah. And, just as we wind up here, I want everyone to just think about this storyline from little Kris Millgate hiking with her dad, behind her dad, which she hated, continually lost, to 800 miles in a raft on an 850-mile trip following salmon by herself. Just that art of the possible, just with a little bit of investment, a little bit of an encouragement, and a lot of inclusion. Bring your kids with, and great things can happen. Kris, as we wind up the episode, is there one thing that comes to your mind as you would talk to a dad who has daughters and maybe trying to figure out a path to include them in the things that they want to do, that you could maybe impart on them before we go?
Those 80 miles on a raft, I was not alone. I will tell you that. My husband and my boys were there. That was the only part of the trip that they were on. And there were three other families, all on their own rafts. And but on my raft was my family, and that was the only time my family was with me on that trip. And so they got to see. I couldn't row and shoot. My husband had to row. He's a way better rower than me. But my boys could be there, and they could see that whole migration through just that little window. For my kids, that's important. Both of my kids have done projects in school about salmon, and I know that's why. So think about when you're out with your kids, especially with girls, don't say, well, don't's not the right word. Avoid saying you can't do this because you're a girl. The two words I don't use are can't and quit. And that's when I use them. The only time I use them is when I use them together.
Correct.
Can't quit. So
That's great advice.
make sure that your kids always know that whatever it is they want to do, outside or otherwise, that they can do it as long as they never quit.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Now, for anyone who wants to follow up on the stories that you've told us today, where are they able to view the documentary and purchase the books?
Thank you for asking. Please come over to tightlinemedia.com. You can watch films about salmon, about grizzly, and my new film for wildlife premiering this spring is about sage grouse and the high deserts of the West. And they all have books. So there's backstories about the circus that goes on behind making all these films. And you can also contact me there. And then on social media, just look for Kris Millgate. I'm always outside, and I guarantee you I will show you something curious. If not curious, then for sure, at least it's going to be wild.
Awesome. Kris, can't thank you enough. Guys, we're wrapping up another episode of Girl Dad Outdoors Podcast. Thanks for joining, and we'll catch you next time.
Four girls running free down a gravel road, barefoot dreams where the tall pines grow, each one different, strong and true. I just thank God I get the view, from sunrise lines to firelight hours, watched them bloom like wildflowers. This is our story, wild and true. Girl, dad, outdoors, raising daughters with a view. Lines in the water, lessons in time. Some lead, some follow, some walk the line. I don't choose their roads, I just see them through, cheering every step they choose to do. From sunrise lines to firelight hours, watch them bloom like wildflowers. This is our story, wild and true. Girl, dad, outdoors, raising daughters with a view.